Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video I'm going to be doing my first ever tier list. This has been something that has been requested of me quite a lot during the S-Class era, and I was working towards doing some really cool stuff. I may still do that in the future because it was actually a cool idea I had, but with the start of the Mythic era I thought I should really just start doing it from pretty much day one. I'm going to review characters, and as I review them, I'll add them onto my tier list to be tiered with the rest of the characters I've already reviewed. So if you have seen the characters I've reviewed already, you'll know the list of characters below. As you can see, we have got all the characters I have done a little spotlight on. There are 17 characters here, and I'll be putting them in this list. It is A tier, B tier, C tier, and D tier, and then they're sort of like highs and lows, extremes of those being OP and needs buffing on characters that are way overtuned based on the other characters that are currently released, or way underpowered based on the other characters that are already released. Now, it's something to mention. I will not be putting them at their tier that they will be at the end of the tier list right away. So for instance, if we roll back to the S-Class era, if I did it the same way, Pete would just go straight into the A tier and potentially OP tier because he was the first S-Class. He would instantly be the most powerful character, no one to actually come close to him, and then the next S-Class that comes out is going to be Priya, who would go straight into the A or OP tier, and then Pete would be pushed down because he's basically got a counter that's come into the game. That's how I'm going to do it. Down underneath the tier list, you can see I have them in the order that I actually did a review video on them, and that's the order that I'm going to be placing them. So first up we have Aaron as a mythic character, and in my opinion Aaron goes straight into the A tier because he's a solid character from the get-go. I think a lot of people when they saw him just saw him as a really solid character, could seemingly work quite well on attack and defense. I like that he is in Prestige. Prestige 7 is quite low. A lot of people are going to be able to get this character, and I think he's going to be a pretty good character for anyone who obviously gets their hands on him. There are going to be better characters, no doubt, but this is like a good baseline character, and it is one of the most accessible parts of the game. Prestige 7 is not going to be too terrible to actually get to. So straight away, goes into A tier. I don't think he's crazy overpowered. I like that he's bringing something new to the table as well. Healing based off of damage is quite interesting. Next up we had Beta, and Beta I would say doesn't change Aaron's tier at all, and we can compare him to Aaron and just say he's just a little bit worse than Aaron in terms of how powerful he's going to be initially, just between these two characters. I think Beta could be really powerful long term if you put a lot of investment into him, get the right kit going, but I think that realistically he is that defensive team character. He has got very quick rush, 55 AP I believe. He has got decap, so he's going to be quite nasty. He's going to get more powerful when a command comes out. So like eventually I might review a command character and you're going to see like half of the characters on my list just go up a tier because they're going to be the ones that get more powerful because they've got faster rushes. They're more powerful rushes, like single hit, that decap, much more devastating than let's say a medic or a controlling character. Next up we have Abraham, and I would say Abraham goes straight in, and he's definitely popping into the A tier, but this basically for me pushes both Beta and Aaron down a tier because this is where you're going to see like it open up a little bit. Abraham is like now the definition of an A tier character, and I think this is a pretty solid definition. C tier for me would just be kind of just that fine character, normal, okay. D tier is just like not very good, and B tier is a good character. Obviously, they can get pumped up based on synergy, like I talked before. When it comes to Abraham himself, lots of damage potential. The fact that he has a brand new specialist skill, and it works well with the new changes to mods, so you can have another character with burn mod. He comes in afterwards. There's going to be a lot of burn just off of turn 1. I like it quite a lot. He looks quite enjoyable to use. The only downside of him is his signature move was quite slow, and it basically was a turn 4 signature move. So he doesn't have the same sort of damage potential that some characters have. And if, as a tough character, you'd want that signature move to be a bit faster, so you could maybe put a rampage weapon in his hands. But I don't think that's going to be so useful for Abraham here. Next up, we have Jesus, and Jesus was kind of underwhelming, but he's another character that's kind of going to sit in the same sort of place for me as Beta, where I think if he's geared correctly, he could be pretty dangerous. I see him as more of a defense team character. Again, it's going to be hard to gauge how powerful these characters are going to be long term. you know, until we get, you know, a good idea. But I think he's going to be okay, but he could potentially be pushed up to B tier depending on other characters that come out. I don't think his signature move is as bad as it seems, even though he's only given a couple of characters focus. He does gain AP off that. It is enough to get a rush on the defense team. His rush is very powerful. He can hold an absolute defense weapon. I think he has an absolute defense weapon on base. He's one of the few characters that actually has a decent weapon. So for me, C tier seems about right. Next up, we have Negan, and Negan is a very offensive character that is obviously a leader. And while I don't think he is individually as powerful as some of the other characters out of the tier that I'm going to put him into, I do think he is going to be used by a lot of people because he is a leader and he is very hard hitting. Got a very nice rush, got kind of nice passives. The main is a nice little bonus on top. So, yeah, I kind of like Negan. He can hold a stun on attack weapon. I think stun on attack, the amount of strong offensive characters that we're seeing in the moment, is going to have like a comeback. So I kind of feel like stun resist is going to be that new meta resist going forward. In that same batch, we also did look at Wayland. And I'm going to put Wayland into B tier right now. I think he's going to probably get propped up in the future, just because his rush is very important. He gives AP to other characters. He is more of an enabler. He is a support character. But the fact that he has disarm, the second a character comes along that is really going to require disarm on a defense team. Right now, we're looking at mainly offensive characters. So we're not going to be putting Wayland too high in the tier list just yet. But other characters down the line might push him up a little bit. But I think Wayland's good on attack. You're going to need that AP gain from somewhere. And if it's from Wayland's rush or from a weapon, that is all good. As the 7th character that I looked at, it will be Sandy. She was the first real damage dealer, like pure damage dealer that we saw. And she would go straight into that A tier for me. Her damage output is really, really high. She does only hit a couple of times. There is obviously a bit of RNG on how her kit works. She's got to hit the collaterals, splash damages to get the best out of it. One of her passives isn't as good as it could have been. I was a little bit disappointed with how one of her passive worked. It was just sort of like a chance every now and again not to get destroyed by Reflect. So it wasn't like that amazing. So she definitely could have been slightly better. She could have gone into that OP tier if that was buffing her collateral or buffing her damage output at all. But because it's not, she's going to sit very high in that A tier for me. And if it was possible, the next character is going to sit even higher in the A tier, and this is going to be Andrea. And this is because she has the potential to be absolutely crazy. I did show in my video of her the full potential of her being able to like rush 2 times in 2 turns, get 4 attacks off. But she has to consistently take out characters. She has to get the 30% RNG roll on her passive to be able to get the 100% AP. She is a harder character to combi. You know, that in itself is going to mean that she's not going to be max tier for a lot of people, which means less damage a lot of the time. But if you do get her twice and you do fully max her out, she has got really high potential. She can hold a rampage weapon, but that's only, I think, going to proc with her basic attacks and her signature move. I think her rush was just a very, very hard hit. But again, it brought something quite nice into the game, where it was backline characters taking more damage. I like the idea, but I think she just sits very solidly right at the top of the A tier right now. In the next batch of characters, the first I reviewed was Sophia, and I think Sophia isn't actually as bad as people seem to be making out. She is the first controller we had a look at. Everything on her kit's going to be control, her weapon, her signature move, her rush, and that's going to be really annoying to deal with. I don't think she's going to be a priority target. She's pretty much the first real defense team character that I see coming into the reviews that I did as well. So it's going to be like the first of more powerful characters. And because of that, she's not going to be prioritized, and she's just going to be hitting stuns, hitting in pairs, hitting all the, you know, controls within her kit. The big bonus as well is she doesn't need AP on attack on her weapon because her rush was nice and fast. She could go pure stats, which just means you're going to raise up those defensive stats even more and make her even harder to take out. She does also have a specialist skill that adds to her control, so that's just a nice little cherry on top. Nothing too overpowered here. That's why she's just sitting in the decent tier, I think, just the above average tier in terms of the B tier. Next up, we have Alpha. Now, Alpha I like a lot. But I don't think she's OP, but I just really, really like her kit. Kind of like how I like Sandy's kit. I think it works really, really well. And for that, she is definitely going to be sitting in that A tier as well. I think she's still not as powerful as Andrea in terms of her potential, But I think there's less RNG in what Alpha brings to the table. She can also be geared quite, you know, basically, like, not too offensively, and still be used reasonably well on defense team. She has got a first turn signature move that does infection, so you're going to be getting that trader-esque first turn infection off, which is actually stronger than trader because it's a 60% infection. So the potential there from Alpha herself in terms of just being that frustrating defense team character is quite high. She can hold an impenetrable defense weapon on a defense team as well, so even harder to just like control and take care of on that first turn. And she will be a priority target if she's there. And again, that just frees up other characters on the defense team because of that. Next up, we had Magna, and Magna was the first defense lead we've had a little review of. I don't think she is as powerful as Negan is on the attack teams, but she has quite nice parts of her kit. I like the fact that, again, she isn't actually that strong an individual character, but you have to do something to her on the first turn, otherwise she's going to buff all adjacent teammates, and that's going to be everybody because she is a leader most of the time, by 20% defense. And that's going to be really nice against percentage damage teams, which is going to be the majority of Mythic attack teams at the beginning. So you're going to have to waste attacks on her to get her disarmed, or, you know, get her controlled in any sort of way to stop her from doing that buff on turn 2, turn 3, so on and so forth. On the same day, I did review Princess. Now, Princess comes in without a shadow of a doubt at the top tier, all the way up at OP. Just because she can hold a rampage weapon, she does do 4 separate attacks. They can all proc rampage. It doesn't actually necessarily all go to the same character, and I think that's actually a bonus because the secondary rampage attacks can take out the first person you attacked and got them down to like 10% HP. I did go over it in detail on her video and show basically how her rush works. It can be really, really crazy. And right now, we don't have any defensive characters on this list that's going to deal with that. You know, that's why she's in the OP tier right this second. If these were the only characters getting released within Mythics, obviously Princess just stands out head and shoulders above everybody else. Now, next up, I actually have Rick, and Rick is an interesting one. I actually think Rick is A tier, but I'm most likely going to place him in B tier. I think he's a better leader than Negan, but I think his kit is worse as a character. So if you were going to have a character that you wanted to get the most out of in terms of percentage damage, Rick is definitely the way to go. Whereas if you wanted to have a character that was still very powerful in themselves and still add to the rest of the team, that would be Negan. You could obviously use Rick leader and Negan beside him. That is definitely potential. The trait damage bonus from Rick's lead skill works with mods, works with weapon bonuses, works with everything that already gives trait bonuses, including the actual trait of a character as well. It amplifies all of your damage output when it comes to traits, and this is where I think he's going to be very useful, especially early on when just basic attacks and single target hard hitting rushes are going to be very important. If you've got a lot of 1535s, your attack stats are going to be nice and high, and extra trait damage is just going to just destroy defense team characters. Okay, so of the last 4 characters, 3 of them were defense team characters. The first being Darius, and for me, Darius kind of sits on a line. He kind of sits on this line right here, where he definitely can be B tier without too much of a problem. But I think the majority of Darius characters we're going to see are going to be C tier. But this isn't Darius's fault. I think it's more that most people aren't going to gear him correctly. They're not going to put the right weapons in his hands. They're not going to take advantage of how his kit works, where he relies on heal and high HP. A lot of people are going to like gear him defensively, massive defense, and do resist like taunt resist and things that don't really make much difference for Darius's kit. I think you could potentially get him up to being a B tier powerful character, maybe even A tier in the right synergy combo. He isn't a character that you're going to focus on, but he is also not a character that's going to get progressively more powerful as the fight goes on. He's going to have the same power pretty much throughout the fight. Although once he does start getting his rushes and signature moves off, obviously he gets a bit more sustained. But I'm probably going to push him all the way down to C tier because, like I said, the majority of Darius we're going to actually see aren't going to be that great. But I don't think it's the character's fault so much as people aren't going to gear him correctly. Another defense team character comes in, and this time it is going to be G tier. He's going to go straight up to that A tier. He has nice potential. Another character that you kind of have to prioritize. You noticed I've said that with 2 or 3 now defense team characters, which if you get the combo correct on a defense team, could be really, really good because you've got 2 or 3 characters that you're having to prioritize turn 1, or they're going to start getting buffed or rolling on with their like specialist skill. And with the aggro specialist skill that Gator has, I think he has the potential to be very, very nice. He can also hold an absolute defense weapon, and I like that quite a lot. I think Gator has the potential to be a very frustrating character. I don't think he's OP. I have seen a lot of people say that he's OP and broken. He's only OP and broken if you completely ignore him for like 5 or 6 turns. 100%. Most characters would get like that if they had a skill that buffed them every turn. The longer the fight goes on, the longer he's alive, the more of a problem it's going to be. You need to definitely control him and take him out as quickly as possible. So the last couple of reviews come in, and now the Governor will come in as well. I think he sits up there at A tier as well in terms of being a very powerful defense team character. And with him popping into the A tier, I think at the moment that's enough to put Princess down to A tier. But again, I think she's in the crossover at this point. Because the way Governor works, him getting taken out and Princess having no control, it does mean that Governor will likely, you know, take out 2 of your friendlies on an attack team if Princess does manage to take him down. He is obviously going to have stun on defense. He's going to have a lot of nice things that are going to counter potential parts of Princess's kit. He's going to have high HP, which is going to be nice also. So at this point, I would probably drop Princess down to A tier, but she's still obviously right on the borderline, and you could definitely get her into OP tier depending on the matchups, you know, the synergy of the team that you're going to bring with her. But I think the most of the time now, if people have got Governor and Gator on defense teams, Princess is not going to be as powerful as without those characters existing. And the last character that comes in is going to be Shiva. She is also going to shake it up as well, because as she comes in, she is a character that can be used on attack and defense. She has a first turn signature move. She's going to push one character down. It's only going to be Negan, because in terms of individual power, he does stand out a little bit weaker than these characters. And I think he will just basically be the top character in the tier below. But Shiva obviously brings a lot of bleed to the table. Very powerful character. I like her a lot. We have got confirmation of how her passive is meant to work as well. It's to the target, not to the entire team. The entire team would have probably pushed her up to that OP tier without a doubt, because that could have potentially been nuts if you had it with characters like Abraham, or just basically every character with mods. It just would have worked exactly the same way. Now I'm just going to sort these into the order in terms of how powerful I think these characters are, and I think it doesn't really matter too much on the lowest tier. They're all around the same power. I think Darius probably sits a little bit higher than the rest, just because, like I said, he could get pushed up to B tier depending on how you build him. On the next tier, I kind of think that Wayland sits way up top. He's one of the more powerful characters here. And then we can also have Negan probably sitting up here as well. And I would say it probably is Magna and Rick just exactly the same, and Sophia and Aaron just about the same as well in terms of how useful they're going to be on the teams that you're going to bring them in on. And in the A tier, we'll put Princess way up the top for sure. I think we'll have Shiva up there as well. Also Andrea, and I think we'll have Alpha, Sandy. I think maybe Governor's a little bit more powerful than Sandy. So maybe around this, with the last 3 characters being kind of on a level. These are all very powerful characters at A tier. So the differences between these characters might be just like small amounts, but I think that's pretty much how it's going to go. Generally, attack team characters are going to be more powerful just because you are going to have full control of how they work. Whereas defense team characters, it just relies on the AI, which is generally got more chance of messing up or more chance of you kind of predicting what they're going to do. You know, players are unpredictable. So that is my tier list as it stands. I'll be adding more characters to this list as I review them. I definitely think there are a couple of characters, particularly Darius, Wayland, and Princess, where they're right on the edge of potentially going up to the tier above just about based on their power. And it really depends on A, how you kit them out, and B, what sort of defense you come up against. I think Wayland coming up against the likes of Gator is going to be extremely important to use him against Gators, and potentially even Governors. Disarm is going to be really important against those 2 characters. So for that reason, he could potentially get pushed up. And we may see the kind of characters that I review in the future, he may get pushed up because of those other characters that come out. We'll have to wait and see. But that's my ideas, my thoughts. If you have any ideas and thoughts on these characters as well, let me know in the comments down below. That is my first tier list. We'll probably have one in the next 1 or 2 weeks once I get some more reviews on my channel. But that is the end of this video, guys. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. keep on surviving.